In this section, I'm going to explain checkpoint firewall technology, that is three-tier technology. I will start with first security management architecture, that is SMART, secure internal communication, SIC, internal certificate authority, and initializing trust. Security management architecture or SMART. So SMART is a core component of checkpoint unified security architecture, and with SMART, security administrators can centrally configure, manage, monitor, and report on all security devices, including endpoints, from a single console, that is a smart dashboard, GUI client. And there are three essential components of checkpoint security management architecture. So a smart architecture means three core components of checkpoint firewall. So basically there are three core components of checkpoint firewall. Let's understand them. So a smart console, SMS or security management server, and third one is security gateway, right? So a very high level overview of like three tier architecture of checkpoint firewall is like a smart console, that is a GUI client, a Windows machine, Windows 10 machine with a smart console software, right? First, this connects to management server, a database server, and from this management server, we push policy to the security gateway. So security gateway is your firewall basically, enforcement module. So security gateway is responsible for inspecting traffic, encryption, decryption, VPN termination, right, etc. So security gateway is the firewall, and security management server is like security policy database, security rules, objects, logs. By default, SMS security management server is also the log server, right? And that is why like we use the term three-tier architecture in checkpoint firewall, because there are three different components, right? Now here, the important point to understand here in this checkpoint firewall three-tier technology is like what's the benefit of like this three-tier technology? Why do we need to have a dedicated management server, right? So let's take example. Let's say you have 50 security gateways, 50 firewalls placed at different locations, right? And you want to manage all the 50 security gateways from a centralized server, management station, right? So rather than just managing firewall individually, like creating security policy, logging, licensing, monitoring, reporting, what we want to manage all the 50 security gateways from a centralized management server, right? So it's possible here, right? Why? Because there is a centralized management server. So basically management server and security gateway, they both run on top of checkpoint firewall operating system, that is GAIA operating system, right? So gateway and management server, they both run on top of GAIA operating system and same operating system, right? Same operating system. And smart console is a Windows machine, Windows 10 machine with a smart console software installed onto it, right? So basically Windows computer, like the GUI client, means like a smart console. First it connects to management server, and then security policies are created. Once it's done, then we push the policy to gateway or multiple gateways. So at the time of pushing policy, now we would have the option to select a specific gateway or all gateways or group of gateways. So like a single policy can be pushed onto multiple gateways, right? It's a basically distributed deployment, distributed installation, distributed deployment. Now here, let's understand a very important point here. An important point is like this SMS, security management server, and security gateway, right? First, they should have a secure channel for communication. secure channel is required here, right? They should trust each other and there should be secure channel, a kind of tunnel, VPN tunnel sort of thing. Without that, policies can never be pushed to the security gateways. And that's what I'm going to discuss in the next slide. That is secure internal communication, SIC establishment between management server and the security gateway, right? SIC establishment. And I'm also going to explain different TCP ports used here, like when this smart console connects to management server. So what all TCP ports are like, or different daemons are like required here. And what about like when we push policy from management server to the security gateway? And of course, when security gateway like communicate with the management server, then what TCP port is required here. And it's important to understand uh, like what all TCP ports are required, right? Because whenever like we manage different or multiple security gateways placed at different locations, I mean like the remote security gateways from a single management server, then definitely we need to know like various TCP ports or communication ports, because they need to be explicitly allowed in the security policy. And I'm going to explain about explicit and implicit security rule also in the like security policy section. So three components: a smart console, as I mentioned, a GUI client, a Windows machine, security management server, like a database server, security objects, security policies, or rules. By default, management server itself is the log server. Even internal certificate authority server, management server itself is internal certificate authority server. And what about security gateway? Security gateway is the firewall, right? Like doing routing, encryption, decryption, like security enforcement, VPN termination, everything. Security gateways. So what about the redundancy? I mean, like if there is only one management server, let us assume that there are two, three, or four different firewalls, maybe at different location, and this single management server is used to manage all the security gateways, right? From single management server, all security gateways are going to be managed. And how many gateways we can manage with single management server? Now again, it depends on the platform and as well as licensing, right? So even we can manage like up to 100 or more than that security gateways from a single management server. It's all about the licensing. So if there is a license to manage 100 security gateways, all 100 security gateways can be managed from single management server. But what about the redundancy? What if like this management server goes down? If there is only one management server and management server goes down, that means we would not be able to create new security policy, no like logging in fact, right? Because security management server is like responsible for like doing everything like policy installation and logging and reporting, monitoring everything from here. So for redundancy, what we can do, we can have another management server. I mean like first management server is what? Primary management server, primary. And the next one is secondary management server. That is possible. That is possible, right? And of course, there should be secure communication between both like primary and secondary management server. And secondary management server means read only copy of database. Primary means read and write copy of database. So for redundancy, there can be more than one management server. Even in case if you want to have a dedicated log server, additional log server, that is also possible. But by default, management server itself is a log server also. What about security gateway? Security gateway like redundancy. If there is only one gateway, so of course like there is no redundancy at all. For redundancy, there can be more than one gateway, at like one site, one location. And for gateway redundancy, either VRRP need to be configured, virtual router redundancy protocol. I hope you are aware with this VRRP in your like routing section. Virtual router redundancy protocol, a standard layer 3 redundancy protocol, very similar to HSRP or GLVP, but they both are Cisco proprietorship based, but VRRP is the standard one, right? So this Gaia operating system supports VRRP, and of course another solution here is cluster Excel clustering, and clustering is the preferred redundancy method, recommended method even by the checkpoint. So for gateway redundancy, either we can configure VRRP or cluster Excel, and for management server there can be secondary management server for the redundancy. And what about this smart console? Do we need to care about this smart console redundancy? Not exactly. It's just a Windows machine. As so there is no database here, no policy, no logs, nothing. So what about the redundancy of a smart console? We really don't care about a smart console machine. We are just a Windows 10 machine. In case if like this GUI client is not available, so simply we need to install a smart console.exe file on any Windows machine, working machine, Windows 10 machine, right? And of course, a smart management server, if it has been configured to allow a specific IP address, like the GUI client IP address has been specified here. So you need to update that, the list of GUI client. By default, like whenever we do the initial configuration, then any GUI client, as so there is no restriction. So any smart console, dashboard, a GUI client like can be connected to they can connect to management server if like IP address are management server and username and password are known, right? But in case if we want to limit access, then here we have the option, we can specify the IP address of GUI client machine, right? So it's first level of defense. Whenever any smart console or dashboard will try to connect to management server, so first line of defense is what? GUI client, the list like what we maintain here. In case for in lab topology, in fact, lab environment, what we do, we set like any address. Like 000/0, any IP, any mask, right? So only like username and password both will be required only in order to be connected to management server. So a smart console like your GUI client, redundancy wise, we are not bothered with that. Really don't need to care about GUI client. Management server, yes, there should be proper redundancy of management server. It's a database server, policy database, log server, even internal certificate audit server, security gateway. Definitely minimum like there should be two security gateways at each location, each site, right? And how many gateways can be managed from a centralized management server, that depends on like the platform, and of course licensing is very important here. So if there is license of to manage 25 gateways, then only 25 gateways can be managed from this security management server. And the important point I should just discuss here, whenever this smart console connects to security management server, so basically here, let me CPMI stand for checkpoint management interface. Management interface, checkpoint management interface, that is TCP port number 18190 is used here. So when a smart console connect to management server, so one of the port is TCP 18190, and there is another port in R80.X, a new port CPM, that is checkpoint management server, TCP port 19009, right? So let me write down properly here. So here TCP port 18190, CPMI, that is checkpoint management interface, and TCP port 19009, right? This one is new. So CPM, checkpoint management server, and this one is CPMI, checkpoint management interface. But the question here is, do we need to care about both the ports like 18190 and 19009 when this smart console connects to management server? Not really. And let me explain the point like why we don't need to worry about like both the ports. Here, let's say security gateway here, the firewall, external interface that goes to internet side, WAN side, LAN segment here, and management server, SMS, and GUI client here on the same segment. GUI client, that is smart console, gateway IP address 10.0.0.1, SMS IP address 10.0.0.2, and GUI machine IP address 10.0.0.3, right? So this GUI computer, GUI computer 10.0.0.3 connects to SMS 10.0.0.2, right? Is gateway required here? Of course not. Why gateway is not required? Because they both are in the same network, like LAN segment, in the same network, source and destination, right? So gateway is not required here. It means the communication here is taking place directly between GUI client and SMS. GUI client and SMS, there is direct communication, right? Because traffic doesn't need to pass through the firewall. So really, we don't need to care about these two ports like TCP 18190 and TCP 19009. We don't need to care about these two ports. And if let me take another scenario. Let's say here SMS server and a firewall here, security gateway, internet maybe, or GUI client is not in the same zone, right? GUI client is here, SMS, let's say again SMS IP address here is 10.0.0.2, this segment, and GUI client is in different IP network 0.1. Now this GUI client, a smart dashboard, wants to connect to SMS, right? So this communication need to pass through the security gateway. Security gateway means firewall. So now do we need to create security policy to allow both the ports here in security gateway, right? Because as far we understand, security gateway or firewall means implicit deny, right? Firewall means implicit deny. So if we do not create any security policy, so no traffic is allowed to pass through the firewall. So now the question here is, can this GUI client now connect to SMS? Because they both are not in the same network, in fact, right? This need to pass through the firewall, So do we need to create like a security policy to allow both the communication ports like TCP 18190 and 19009, like between GUI client, that is smart dashboard, and SMS security management server? No, we really don't need to create that. Why? Because in checkpoint firewall, there are two type of security policies. One that is created by administrator, explicit security policy, and the other one is implicit, default, created by default automatically, right? So if the GUI client is the trusted client, like the GUI client, so even if GUI client is here, GUI client, but trusted client means security management server has been configured to allow like the communication coming from this GUI client, right? So if GUI client IP is 172.16.0.1, SMS IP is 10.0.0.2 because it's one segment here. Let's say this one 10.0.0.1 and this one is 172.16.0.2 or any IP address from the same subnet. So really, we don't need to create any implicit security policy to allow both the ports. Why? Because in checkpoint firewall, by default, implicit policy is created to allow communication ports, even some control connections. I will explain them in detail later on. What all control connections are allowed by default, what all default ports are allowed. But yes, rest assured, you don't need to create any security policy to allow both like CPMI 18190 TCP and CPM, that is TCP 19009 TCP ports, right? So even if GUI client is not directly connected to the same segment, still GUI client can connect to management server if there is IP reachability. Of course, IP reachability has to be there. So if there is IP reachability, then GUI client can connect to management server. Firewall will allow this communication. Firewall will allow. So really, you don't need to care about it, right? And if like logging of this implicit, I mean like the default rules or security policy is allowed, then even we will find the log also. And I'll show you in a very quick demonstration, like whether GUI client from different network segment can connect to management server or not. So but what about if GUI client is at remote location and there is another firewall, different vendor firewall, then definitely we need to enable or allow both the communication port then. TCP 18190 and TCP 19009. Both ports need to be allowed then. But if there is a checkpoint firewall, checkpoint security gateway, so no need to. No need to, right? Now what about like communication between SMS and the security gateway? What all ports are required here in fact? So like the first point here is they both should have trust relationship established. There should be secure internal communication of like a VPN tunnel negotiated and established between management server and security gateway, because the communication must be encrypted, authenticated, right? Communication between management server and the security gateway. How this SIG is established, I'm going to explain in the next slide. But before that, let's understand the different communication ports here. So GUI client first connect to management server, then security policies are created, saved locally here on the database, I mean the SMS, and then the next step is policy installation. We push the policy from management server to the security gateway, right? Policy installation, and policy can be installed only if there is secure internal communication. So for the SIG and policy installation and SIG, TCP port 18191 is required here because there is a checkpoint daemon protocol CPD 18191. So like if there is no SIG, policy cannot be installed. So one of the communication port here is CPD, that is checkpoint daemon protocol TCP 18191, and gateway by default sends log to management server. It means security policy TCP 18191 security policy is pushed from management server to the security gateway, and security gateway sends log to the management server by default. And here like TCP port 257 is required here. That is here like this one is CPT and fw1 underscore log, right? Checkpoint security gateway logs. Security gateway logs. So the next question is, do we need to allow these two communication ports? No. Again, same, implicit, by default, they both are allowed. They both are allowed. Means 18991, that is CPT, and for the logging, TCP port 257. Both are by default allowed. Another communication port is required here, and that is, so one is here, CPD, checkpoint daemon, TCP 18191, and is used for this SIC, secure internal communication, and policy installation. Another one is for the logging, right? So checkpoint security gateway logs, and this one is TCP 257. The third one is like checkpoint security gateway server. It's for the bidirectional, in fact, between like SMS to the gateway and gateway to SMS, and it's TCP port 256. So there are three different ports here between management server and the gateway, and two other important ports here, and that is TCP port 18210 and 18211, right? TCP port 18210 is like internal certificate authority, CA pull certificate, right, between like gateway and the management server. And the next one is 18211. 18211 is like firewall ICA push, in fact, checkpoint internal CA push certificate 18211. So they both are required, in fact, for this SIC establishment. So again, like, do we need to care about any communication port here? Not exactly. As long they all are in the same IP subnet, there is no other firewall. There is no other firewall. So really, we don't need to care about different communication ports here. But why I'm discussing all this? Because let's take an example here. If here like there is a SMS server and local security gateway, same site, same location, and there is one remote security gateway, right? And this remote security gateway can also be managed with the same management server, no problem whatsoever. That is possible, right? That is possible. And that's all like about the distributed deployment scenario in checkpoint firewall. I mean, like the management server can manage local gateway and as well as remote gateways. So local gateway can be easily managed. And you understand like why? Local gateway can be easily managed. And why? Because local gateway means there is no other firewall coming in between, right? So we really don't care about like different communication ports. But what about like managing security gateway 2? Security gateway 2 is not local, right? No, traffic need to pass through this local security gateway 1, between SMS and SG2. So between SMS and SG2, there are different various communication ports, and they need to be allowed on security gateway 1. Then only there can be proper SIC establishment between SMS and SG2, and SG2 can also be managed with the same SMS, right? Understood? Because it's very important point to understand here. Very important point. And I repeat here, local local SMS and gateway, they both are same site, same location, on-prem, and let's say here internet. There is another gateway, security gateway 2, remote gateway. Security gateway 2 is remote gateway. Now what we want to manage security gateway 2 We want to manage now this security gateway 2 from where? SMS server. So what's the problem? Problem is security gateway 1. Problem is here security gateway 1, right? So security gateway 1 is the problem. This one. So at first, like, we have to ensure IP reachability between SMS and SD2. So if SMS has been assigned private IP address, then here like security gateway 1, we would have to configure a static NAT. NAT we will discuss later on. But you need to understand this point, right? There should be proper IP reachability between SMS and SD2. The first point. And the next point is what? All communication ports should be allowed here on security gateway 1 in order to ensure like communication between SMS and SD2. And what all communication ports should be allowed here? So at first place, security gateway 1 here, management server. So, and the remote gateway. So on this local security gateway, like, of course, apart from static NAT configuration, TCP port like 18210 or 18211, they need to be enabled. They need to be allowed, in fact. Then only this SMS will have successful secure internal communication with remote security gateway. And once that is done, then you don't need to worry about the policy installation and all that, right? Because at the time of creating a static net, like we do have the option to create automatically control connections. I mean, like the implicit rules that would be created, and I will show you like in the lab how to establish secure communication between SMS and the remote security gateway, because that's really very important point to understand here. Okay, so up to this point, I hope you have understood properly the three tier architecture of checkpoint firewall, because there are three components: smart console, security management server, security gateway. What's the real benefit of dedicated management server? Centralized management, centralized policy installation, centralized logging, centralized reporting, centralized licensing, right? So in order to manage multiple security gateways or firewall, definitely there should be at least one management server, right? And security gateway is the firewall. So basically management server will never handle any data plane traffic, right? Data plane traffic. So for example, let's say here like a LAN switch and SMS and client machine, client, and here is the gateway, security gateway, LAN side and the interface, security gateway, and this is your switch. So data plane traffic means client will send data plane traffic to the switch and then finally security gateway and then will pass through. So this SMS is not to handle the data plane traffic, user traffic I mean. So data plane traffic means user traffic that need to pass through the security device or gateway or any device. So SMS is just to handle the management traffic, management operation, right? It's not for the data plane traffic. So here, the important point to understand here is, what if there is only one firewall? I mean, like if you have only one site, one location, there is only one security gateway, like this one, only one security gateway. Then what's the benefit of like this dedicated management server? Because you would have to then think about redundancy of both management server and as well as security gateway. So because as far we understand, like if there are 100 security gateways, 25 security gateways, so yes, we understand like there should be centralized management, centralized configuration, reporting, logging, licensing, everything should be centralized, and for that there should be one centralized management server. But what if there is only one security gateway, only one location, still do I need to have like a management server? Yes. In checkpoint firewall, even if you have only one security gateway, only one location, still you need to have management server. So management server is not here optional. Management server is mandatory component, right? So, but in standalone deployment, what you can do in a standalone deployment, you can run both SMS and SG on same virtual or physical platform. That is possible. We can do that, right? So in order to minimize physical or virtual appliance, what we can do, we can run both SMS and SG on the same platform. That is possible. That is possible, right? Because SMS and SG, they both run on top of what? Checkpoint OS, Gaia operating system. Gaia is the checkpoint operating system. So they both run on top of Gaia operating system, right? It means even if like you want to, let us assume that you want to build a home lab in virtualized environment for your lab practice and all that, and you decided to use virtual machines for like installing security management server and gateway, like for the distributed deployment. So what you need to do, first you'll have to install Gaia operating system on the virtual machine, and I will show you in the lab like how to install and all that, because I'll be starting from the scratch, from the very basic. I will show you all the installation and initial configuration. But first you'll have to install the Gaia operating system on the virtual machine. Then of course for there should be another virtual machine with the same operating system, Gaia OS, same operating system. So even during installation of operating systems, you will never be asked to choose between SMS and SG. SMS, I mean like security management server. SG means security gateway. Security gateway or enforcement module or firewall, one of the same thing. So you're never asked like to select between management server and the security gateway, right? So even once like you have installed successfully Gaia operating system on the virtual platform, virtual appliance, then what we do, we do the initial configuration from the web UI, https colon double slash and then IP address of Gaia OS. So during this initial configuration from the web UI, web user interface, here like we would have the option whether to run this platform as only SMS, SD or both, right? So if we select both, it means we are going to run both. And let's say I want to have a dedicated SMS, dedicated SD, I mean like distributed. So at one appliance, select SMS and another SD, right? It means during operating system installation, as such, like there is no way to select SMS or SG. Once OS installation has been successfully done, and during initial configuration, you would have the option to choose between SMS and SG or both, because they both SMS and SG, they both run on top of what? Gaia operating system.